see what we can get into here. Test this out. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check, mic check. Perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and throw up this announcement. Community. Where is it? Alrighty, there we go. Hello, if you're just tuning in, give me one brief moment to throw up these announcements, and I will get everything rolling. Even though I'm going to give it a minute to make sure we have enough people in here. If anyone else wants to join, if you have any questions you want to ask, like right out the gate before I even kick stuff off, like feel free. There's no worries at all. This video is going to kind of act as sort of a, at least, again, and if your question isn't pertinent to what I'm discussing here, that's totally fine. Now that we're starting to get kind of more into the nitty gritty with some of these like different concepts and more like statistical and analytical things, I can't stress enough how important it is for your questions during this portion, because this is a lot of people don't realize how much analytical things and numbers and goofy stuff there is in bowling until they start to learn about equipment. So if something is confusing you, I'm begging of all of you, please ask. Like, ask for clarification. I will happily dive into the best of my ability. It's important to know most of this stuff when it comes to like bowling balls and such, which we'll obviously start to touch on what I had discussed in that first video here. But I think more of the pertinent things are going to come later out in that series once I kind of learn to ensure all of you are applying your basic understanding of bowling equipment then into the adjusting side of it and how to play the lane surface. I think that'll be the most beneficial part moving forward. If any of you are in here that are brand new and are starting to follow along with that Bowling for Newbies playlist, then welcome. A lot of this stuff may be kind of foreign to you starting off, but if you're a new bowler, I will make sure that all of you are getting on board as best I can. I've had quite a handful of people reaching out since that special has ended for the totally free coaching, different lessons, different video reviews I've gotten. I actually just got through the last person just earlier this evening. However, despite this, I am still going to have a special where I'm going to do half off. So it's just $5. It's $5. I can either do an online session, we can do something over the phone, or we can even do, like I just done with somebody, we can do a like video review where you can just send me a couple videos and I'll give you some tips and stuff moving forward. And the beautiful thing about all this stuff is I don't suspect I'm going to ever change my prices within the near future, because I mean, all of us are trying to get better. I think it's wrong to sit there and charge a ridiculous amount, especially given that many people with a lot more expertise than me, could give you a lot more important information. My expertise is not comparative to, a professional coach or anything like that. But I like to think for someone who is 22 years of age, I have a deep brain. I'm more than willing to instill all of your confidence and make sure that all of you are as well off as possible. So there's a good chance I'll probably not get back down to free again for quite some time, since all of you guys have been here through the very beginning and startup of this channel. So the best way I can give back to all of you is by making sure everything is free. So if you don't want to hop in on the half off deal yet, I can totally understand that. I will likely probably cut it back down to free here until we get to probably 300, 350, something like that. I'll throw up an announcement, so just stay tuned. I'll make sure to update the website and everything to reflect the pricing changes and all that stuff as we go along. But I think now that this whole sort of pathway of learning playlist has started to kind of, I'm going to jump in now. If you're watching this video back, I'm doing the wave my hand thing. This is where you watch. So I know I said I was going to wait, but we're going too far here. We already got a handful of people in here already, so I don't want to leave all of you hanging. So I think now that this sort of pathway of learning playlist is done, which if you have not had an opportunity to get fully caught up and watch the pathway of learning playlist in all its entirety, I would for certain strongly advise all of you to do so. Because that pathway of learning doesn't dive into a lot of concepts very deeply, but instead kind of glosses over the surface of things that you should be looking for within yourself to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, refine your understanding of things that are more common than not misleading or not taught in a way that is correct or applicable to the reality that surrounds us. But we have a question ready. Game 1, should I start with a solid and go to reacted? Game 2, And is there 3 house shots, intermediate bowler? Great question. So my easy answer would say, logically, this answer would make sense, right? You'd start off with your super strong stuff that has an easier time of getting through that friction and eating it up a lot better, and then switch to the more, weaker stuff that's able to rely on that oil that's now been pushed beyond the initial part to ensure that it stays online for longer. So short answer, yes. Long answer, it's complicated, right? We know the way that the lane is going to break down will be dependent not only on how you're bowling, but how the people you're bowling against and with are bowling, right? Especially if you have people playing in different zones and people throwing different bowling equipment that's causing the transition to transition in a way that variates between one night in a league or another or whatever, right? The long answer is, well, logically, I would say in practice, if you want to have a quick answer to this, I would say during your practice time, see if the solid has a good shape and see if it is able to store enough energy to allow you to have a optimal angle of entry and carry through the pins in the corners. Because more often than not, especially on the house shots, given that there's such a big amount, there's such a wide range of the amount of oil you can find in the middle versus the outsides. The solid stuff definitely has like the super duper strong stuff, like your super duper really strong solids that read the lane immediately, and the urethanes. They tend to really struggle even towards just the end of game one to still have that a good amount of oomph to come in, and you'll like to leave those pins in the corners a lot. So I would say try it. Definitely, you have the right approach with that. Rely on the stuff that's stronger. But if you're going out in practice and it's already having difficulty to kick those pins out in the corners, you already know it's going to continue to get worse. So at that point, I would advise to go with a more reactive ball. More common than not, at least with most bowlers, which if you are a speed dominant bowler, then sure, the solid will work. But if you're in that balance category, the solids are just too much most of the time, especially toward the end of the game, toward the end of the first handful of games. So give it a shot, see if it works. But if not, then go to the reactive. The reactive stuff usually tends to start off okay and usually look even better over time. So if you're looking for a more aggressive option, go with what you said and try that super duper strong stuff and see if you can be aggressive. Or if it doesn't look the best or you want to be a little more conservative and just, stay within the pocket, then go for the reactive to make sure that motion stays constant and stays the same regardless of how it breaks down. But good question. That's a very good question. And your analysis was correct. That is in general an optimal way of going about doing things. And is there 3 house shots? I mean, there's a bunch. Every center has their own, I guess, sort of house shot. It also depends on what oiling machine they use. Like Kegel has a house shot. The Brunswick oil machine has a house shot. Some people might have their own like non-branded ones and they have to make their own house shots because there's a program that goes along with each of these oiling machines that allows you to input, how much oil you want here. Do you want it to apply it forward or backwards? Do you want it to apply, whatever. You can make your own patterns on this program and such. But many people will tend to follow a very, very similar one, usually spanning around 40 feet, 40, 41-ish feet. I would say most are probably about 40. And they'll always have just about, if not exactly, a 10-to-1 ratio between those 2 outer arrows and the inside of those, and the outside being the one side of the ratio. So 2 good questions. So where was I? Yes. So given that we've concluded this pathway of learning, we now have a very good understanding of what our strengths and weaknesses are. I think that the big thing that we were able to kind of squash right away was, like me being able to show all of you what the lane actually looked like, how being able to monitor how your ball is traveling through those pins and how it's deflecting and stuff. That stuff is extremely useful for you to make sure that you're not being misconceived any further, right? And then by you being able to apply that into, okay, let me leverage my strengths and understand my strengths, and let me try to silence my weaknesses and not allow them to come through as often, right? You can identify, am I speed dominant? Am I rev dominant? What kind of tilt am I creating? What sort of shape is a ball going to make when I throw it versus when someone else throw it, right? And this stuff feeds very directly into understanding your equipment. So obviously there's a million different things that you can change with any sort of bowling equipment, right? You could change the things on your shoe. You can apply things to a bowling ball. You can put things inside of a bowling ball, take things out of a bowling ball. The way you put the holes in the bowling ball can be different. They can be angled different ways. They can be different sizes. Everything is all modular. But your bowling ball only has 2 categories of it that actually never change no matter what. And that is the RG and differentials that are corresponding with that bowling ball. So before I get into this, I think we need to first discuss since I've been trying to make sure that we're not being misconceived with anything, I think we first have to, before I discuss these numbers and things and make it in a way that turns a number into something that's easy to understand, I think I first have to kind of squash this issue that I very, 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 very commonly see with a lot of bowlers, new, experienced, and whatnot, and that is to diversify your bag. And not only diversify your bag, but when you're looking at your first bowling ball or your first handful, get the things for what it is that you get a bowling ball that best works for you, especially when you're first starting, right? I know we all want, especially when we're first looking at balls, we all look at the prettiest one or the whatever, or this person on TV had it. But again, like, you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses, because a ball that might look great for me might not look great for you. For you, Debbie, it might not look great for you, but it might look great for me, or vice versa, right? So by understanding that, you need to know, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What causes my ball to look different than somebody else's? So you know, when you're watching footage or looking at these numbers later on, you know, okay, this bowling ball might not make a good fit for me because it's too strong. I don't have enough ball speed to compensate for that. Or maybe it's one that isn't designed to hook a lot, and you already struggle with making a ball hook enough. So then you know, okay, I don't need to buy that, right? Making an educated purchase, especially when you're getting your first handful of balls, is extremely critical, because if you get a ball that isn't best fit for you, especially if it's one of your only ones you have, you're automatically at a disadvantage, because you're now, instead of being helped by your equipment, you're now fighting against your equipment, which is what we don't want, right? So ensuring that you are getting equipment that best fits to your physical game and the way you release the bowling ball is extremely critical. On top of this, on the contrary to this, once you have that ball, don't get a ball like your next handful. Don't get a ball that's extremely similar to the one you already have, right? I made this analogy within the new playlist, that Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist, where I discussed sort of, you know, diversifying your bag. And the best way I can describe this is golf. I actually have my golf clubs in the back. So when we think of golf, you know, there's ever many different clubs. I'm not good, by the way, guys, for the record. There's how many different clubs, right? There's a bunch, and they're all designed to have a different purpose, right? You know, the putter is meant to be for up close, and the driver is meant to be for, you know, getting the most distance out of that club. So why would a golfer only bring drivers with them in their bag when you know that different clubs serve different purposes? Same purpose for bowling, right? If you bought a driver for bowling, I'm a lefty and I'm fighting the hook all the time. Oh yeah, yeah. See, so now you know. Okay, I need to get the weaker stuff, or I need to start. You know what I mean? Especially, that's good to know that you're a lefty as well, because I know you said that you were looking with the solid. For you, since there's one lefty for every 8 however many righties, the transition will be a lot slower. So you actually would probably be you would serve quite a lot of benefit from starting off with a solid, because you can kind of make that lane surface break down in a way that'll make the reactive stuff look even better, since it'll likely be you 8 times more often than it would be for a righty like myself. So useful to know. But yeah, so look for the weaker stuff, especially if you are fighting the hook. The solid might be too much right out the get-go. If it's too much right away, just be like, nah, I'm done. Just go with the reactive. You don't have to, again, you don't have to fight against what that equipment is trying to do, right? It's meant to be a guide. It's meant to help you. It's meant to help paint the picture of what that oil looks like. So allow the equipment to do what it's meant to do. And if you can't control it, then that's okay. Just don't use that bowling ball. It's just not best fit for that situation that you found yourself in. But back to that golf analogy, you know, why would we bring 8 drivers when we know we need a different club for different things, right? So by you getting multiple balls and bringing however many balls you choose to bring, by bringing different ones, you now have different means of attacking that lane, and different means of attacking, and different ways of getting it, right? Nobody putts with a driver, and there's a reason for that. Just like nobody shoots at a 10 pin with a ball that's designed to hook like crazy, because that means you're just fighting your equipment, right? So find equipment that's designed for different needs that you need, also catering on to your strengths, right? Some balls that are different may just not be great for you, right? If you have a ball that reads the end of the lane, right? Like you, Debbie, like let's say like you have a problem with making sure your ball always likes to hook a lot, right? So let's say you have a ball that's, you know, your first ball you got was meant to combat that and help give it some length and help control it a little better. Well, for your next purchase, you might think, oh, I should get like a super duper strong ball. Well, maybe that's not the best case, because then you know, based off of what you bowl on most often and how you throw, that might not be the best purchase, since, well, it might just be too much. But if you get something that kind of is in between the super weak and super strong stuff, maybe like a hybrid ball or something that's a little bit stronger but not super duper crazy like some of the stuff that's out there, right? Or even looking at something like a urethane ball that's meant to be a lot smoother, stronger, of course, but smoother. It's meant to have much more controllable motion. Then that equipment now becomes useful for you when the reactive stuff doesn't look good, versus if you buy something that's too strong and is just beyond uncontrollable for you, then it's just completely useless in the first place. So that's the kind of stuff I mean when I say that, right? Don't keep buying drivers. Look for different clubs in the bag based off of how you swing it, right? It's that easy, guys. It's that simple. So expanding on this concept a little bit, a lot of people like to ask, how can you just look at a ball, Coach Logan, and tell, what is the hook potential? How much is that ball going to hook? How can I really tell, right? Sure, I can watch someone else throw that ball, but if I know I'm going to throw it differently, how do I know how much different it's going to look? And as I've said before, everything is modular. You can apply different things, unapply different things, change things, sand things, everything. So not only your bowling ball, but your physical body you can put things on, and even your shoes as well. So there's ways that we can help create different motions, which will be the next episodes of that Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments playlist. But there are two things that do not change for each of these bowling balls that you can use, that you can look up with a simple Google search, because every single bowling ball has these two numbers that at least sort of paints the picture for, in general, fresh out of the box, haven't touched it, haven't sanded or altered anything on it, what it will look like straight out of when it comes out of the factory. And those two numbers that correspond with it are RG and differentials. Now, as I've said before, there's a million different freaking terms, and there's even more numbers that go along with each term. And I'm not going to sit here and bore you with numbers, because that's not what all of us signed up for. So what I'm going to instead do is I will tell you the numbers and instead explain them in a way that makes them make a lot more sense. I have a storm level that might work better. Yes, that's a great ball for you. Yes, I would agree. Debbie, if yes, try that out. That will be your bridge the gap. Perfect ball. Perfect analysis. Good job. So the RG, in Leighton's terms, without me going into any crazy detail, is just how late or early that ball will tends to read on the lane, right? And again, it's all changeable, and it will change how much you throw. But in general, the potential is what these numbers refers to. So the RG is how early or late that ball is going to want to read the lane. So the lower this number is, the sooner it will want to read and the more aggressive it will be, which is what we like to refer to as strong. Versus the higher numbers will be the ones that tend to wait and hang on to that friction a lot longer and then see that change in direction, which is what we like to call weak bowling balls. And as I've said before, we don't want to get these terms sort of confused, because everyone likes to think the word weak has a bad, if you call something weak, that usually is a bad connotation that's associated with that word. But in bowling, weak is a good thing, and so is strong, right? Depending on what you're bowling on, of course. So strong are the bowling balls that read the lane very soon, and weak are the bowling balls that wait longer before they read the lane. So that RG number kind of helps paint the picture for how strong or weak a bowling ball's potential is going to be. So if you look up a bowling ball and you're looking at the RG number, it'll be 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 something. So, I mean, I'm just going to kind of quantify it in a way that makes sense. So if you're looking and it's 2.50 or below that, that is going to be a very strong bowling ball. Those bowling balls are going to be the ones that read the lane very, very soon and aren't super aggressive and look like a hockey stick. They read the lane and tend to be a lot smoother and have a lot less angle of entry, since they're not coming in as far to the side as the weaker stuff is. Now, if it's between 2.51 something and 2.53, this will be sort of the middle of the road. This is the stuff that tends to read toward the middle of the lane, or the early late end of the lane, I guess, so to speak, right? And then if it's above that 2.53, that is the weak equipment, the stuff that's designed to read after the oil is cut off of the pattern, right? The stuff that's designed to have that hockey stick-like motion. Even though we know, if you watch the video where I discuss the dimensions, we know it doesn't look like a hockey stick. But I'm just referring to this in a way that makes sense. Again, I'm trying to put something that's boring into something that makes a lot more sense to all of us, because nobody likes numbers, right? Nobody likes numbers. That's why they have to pay people to do all the number stuff, right? So on top of this again, which you'll come to learn in the next episode of that Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments video, usually these numbers correspond with the cover stock of the bowling ball, because the shell of the bowling ball can be layered with a different sort of cover stock that tends to make the ball read sooner or later, right? And these numbers usually correspond with that, as well as the core, the inside of the bowling ball, which has different shapes and different sorts of makeups that make it read sooner or later as well. So there's a million things that go into this. But again, if you are just looking up a bowling ball and it has a RG of whatever, you know, okay, this is how late or early it will want to read. Its potential to read that early or late. Now, the other number, which is called differentials, or you might see as diff, is what it's abbreviated as. To put it simply, guys, this is just the potential that the ball has to hook, right? So the higher this number is, the more hook potential it will have, and the lower this number is, the lower the hook potential it will have. So this number is extremely low. So if you're looking it up and it's from 0.000 to 0.03, this is a low hooking bowling ball. If it is between that 0.03 and 0.045-ish, that's your middle of the road sort of hook. The stuff that's, you know, kind of bridge the gap between the super duper hook heavy and the super duper not hook heavy stuff. And then if it's above that 2.45 to like 2.06 around there, that's the super duper duper aggressive stuff that has a lot of potential to hook. So now these two numbers tell us a story. Being able to relate these two numbers is extremely useful. So let's just think, okay? If I have a bowling ball and it has a low RG, so that means the ball reads very early, but its differential is also low, that means we have a ball that hooks soon, but also a ball that has a very smooth reaction. It's not a super duper hook heavy bowling ball, but it reads early. Now, let's say we're looking at another ball and it has a same thing, a super low RG. So we know that means it's going to read early, but the differential is way high. That will be a ball that reads early, but is very aggressive and hooks a lot. So it's almost a strong, sharp bowling ball. And then you have a strong, smooth bowling ball, which is the one with a low RG and low differentials. Being able to relate these two numbers tells a story about your bowling equipment. A common misconception a lot of people think is they focus so much on the early or late reaction thing with the RG that they kind of forget about that differential, because how those two numbers intertwine with each other directly will tell you what this ball will look like down the lane, right? So now pairing this into what I had discussed earlier, allow me to dive a little bit more in this differential concept. So as I didn't really go much into, I just said hook potential, so I apologize. So the differentials, the best way I can describe it is it shows the potential that the bowling ball will flare. So when a bowling ball is going down the lane and it's rolling like this, if you're looking at each of these balls, so this one's not a good example, but they'll have an axis weight hole. This isn't the axis weight hole. This is a different hole, but to any capacity, what it's trying to do is the core is designed to help make it reach equilibrium by this process that we call precession. And I'm not going to go much into this because it's very complicated. I don't even plan on going into it very much in that new video because, again, I'm not trying to make this boring. I'm trying to make things simple and easy to understand for all of us because, again, they pay people to do numbers, right? They don't pay people to, understand it, right? So we just need to have a basic understanding that's well enough for us to understand it. So when that bowling ball is rolling like this, it's picking up oil, right? Those bowling balls are designed to soak up some oil every time they spin and go down the lane. So flare is this concept of during that process of it trying to reach equilibrium, allowing it to hook, it's rolling over a different spot every time that it rolls over itself. So in essence, instead of the ball going like this and always rolling over the same spot it already rolled over, it's kind of, think of like Earth, how it's like on like an axis and it kind of rotates. It's rotating over a different spot over a different spot on its surface every time it spins. So a low flare bowling ball, which is the one where it rolls over itself multiple times, it's rolling over a spot that it now has oil soaked into the surface. So because of this, that makes it hook less, right? If we know it's rolling over oil each time and picking it up, and on top of it picking it up and rolling over oil, it's rolling over oil that it has picked up. It's now rolling over more and more and more oil as the ball goes down. So that means it makes it kind of smooth and less aggressive versus the high differential stuff, which is where it flares a ton and always rolls over a dry spot of the bowling ball every time it spins. That means it is going to have a much, much easier time picking up friction, especially if it's a reactive bowling ball, right? If we know it's already designed to read the lane late, and it's picking up even more friction and storing more energy, that ball is going to be extremely sharp and extremely aggressive toward the back end of the lane. So again, these numbers even though you can make them kind of change with how you drill it and how you apply different surface on the ball, they tell a story, right? And we need to have the whole book to understand what each chapter is, right? If we only understand one chapter, we can't understand the whole premise of the book, right? That's the best way I can describe this. So you have to be able to understand what these numbers are trying to tell you. I'm not telling you have to understand all of the underlying concepts of each number, but instead understand what that bowling ball, by just me looking at two numbers, what it will likely look like. That's the bottom line here. So by you understanding this and applying that into what I had discussed earlier, with you understanding how you bowl and applying your strengths and weaknesses into the bowling equipment that you're purchasing, this will make you make a much more educated purchase or purchases as you move forward. Because again, there is nothing worse than you getting a bowling ball and you're almost fighting against what it's trying to do, right? If we to put it to example, I'll give you a real world example. So when I was first getting into bowling X amount of years ago, I bowled one-handed. And if you guys look at me, I would say a spaghetti noodle has about the circumference that my arms have, right? I'm a very small guy. So I always had a lot of issues with creating speed, a lot of issues with that, right? And because of this, a lot of my equipment liked to hook a lot. But this was before I had a bowling ball, mind you. This is when I was just throwing a house ball and it was just plastic. So I went in the pro shop and I said, hey, I'm looking to purchase a bowling ball. And the guy, of course, was like, "Is this your first ball?" And I was like, "Yes, it was." And he said, "Oh, that's awesome. So, like, what kind of stuff are you looking for?" And I said, and he should have. I kind of, I'm to blame for this still, but you think the pro shop operator would have said something? I said, "I want something that's really aggressive and hooks really quickly, like really quickly." So he sold me. I don't even have the ball anymore, but he sold me a solid ball. So I now am a bowler that has a. I had some good spin. I had some good revolutions I created, but my speed was just not there, guys. It just was not there. So when I got this bowling ball and got it drilled or whatever, it it hooked. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna hook. And it, I kid you not, I stood in like the same spot. It hooked off the left side of the lane, guys. It was bad, like literally uncontrollable. So now I'm swinging my arms so hard, and now I'm building on bad habits because I'm fighting against what the ball is trying to do, just to get it to even stay to the right side of the head pin. That's when I had to learn to loft the ball. I had to learn to loft the ball with a month of experience because it was just too much. Yeah, see, it's a common, like, everyone's going to run into a problem. So by you understanding this, this will help you get equipment that's designed to help you, not make you have to fight something, right? That with a million different balls and a million different things you can do to each ball, you better at least have a baseline understanding of what it is you're getting into before you purchase it, or ways you can alter it to better cater to what you need. Because last thing we need is to fight one more thing. Bowling, with all these fancy, crazy stuff, with everything going on, is already complicated enough, as I'm sure all of you have gotten to learn to realize here. So make it simple for yourself by getting something that caters to how you bowl. That's the bottom line here, folks. That is the bottom line. So transitioning into these understanding of equipment and stuff based off of how you bowl is critical. So I had proposed a challenge in the previous video of that Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments video, where I had discussed, make a chart, right? So make it be a two-dimensional chart, and I would say make your chart have, strong, weak, and have it be sharp or smooth reactions. And just chart your equipment, or even if you don't have a lot of equipment, chart what you have now and chart what the bowling balls that you're looking into purchasing would be, and see kind of where differently they kind of end up based off of those two numbers. So now you know, okay, I have something that's kind of like that ball that I was thinking about getting, so maybe I shouldn't get that yet. Maybe I should look into getting this. But again, you have to still base this off of how you bowl, right? Like, some stuff may just be too strong, too weak, too smooth, too aggressive for how you bowl, right? Like that instance I had. Like, now I probably could make it work since I have more speed if I still had that ball again. But even still, like, there comes a time when a bowling ball is useful, because there are two things you have to base what your bowling ball you're using off of. You have to base how you bowl and what you're bowling on, right? Who you're bowling against, what the oil looks like, how it's breaking down, looks different every time. But if you can go in with kind of a concept, okay, I've bowled league here before, okay, I've bowled a tournament here before, okay, I've bowled on this oil pattern before, you can at least bring a couple things that usually tend to work with that. And then again, based off of how it transitions with the people you're bowling against or with or whatever, then okay, I need to change to this equipment because it will create more of this shape, which is what I'm lacking right now, or it will help me get my ball to read the lane sooner, or it'll help me get to my ball to read the lane later, or more smoother, and more aggressively, and more sharper, and all that stuff, right? So there comes a time when you have to apply that, but there also comes a time, because this is a common thing I see too, is it's important that you get equipment that helps you, but it's also equally as important that you don't learn to solely rely on, buying a new ball for your adjustments. I know that that's a harsh reality for a lot of people, and a lot of people I will never dare to say that to their face, because people can get really upset when they hear that. But there's a lot of people that think that they, that they don't have the talent, or they don't have the understanding to adjust something physically to make that ball create a different shape, right? As I've discussed before, we know that how the ball's coming out of your hand can change the motion it's creating, and how much tilt you're creating on the ball can create a different motion, and all these crazy things. So by you understanding that, you can make a ball, even though it has, those two numbers that tell you what its potential to hook and everything is, you can still make it have a different shape, right? Like, just because you didn't strike on a couple frames, but you were close, doesn't mean you should just get up and change balls, right? Maybe it just means, okay, I have to change something physically, or I just have to change how I'm playing the lane. The only reason I'm mentioning that is because it's just such a big thing now with all this new equipment and stuff. I think a lot of bowlers feel the need to, you know, rely on different equipment to help them make an adjustment. But I'm promising all of you that you can make that adjustment. You can teach yourself to do it. Some things do take time, and it can be very frustrating, especially if you're trying to try something new and you're learning. And because you're trying things new, you lack experience to be consistent with it yet. I'm always in that spot. I've always been there. Like, I think my mental agility is greatly outmatched by my physicalness. Like, I have a firm understanding of what should be happening, but when it comes to the application process, since my body is so behind from where my brain is, I get so frustrated because it's like, oh, I knew what I should have done there, but I can't do it. And that's a very frustrating thing to have happen to you. But I'm telling all of you, it will come, right? If you just can remain persistent, remain confident within yourself that you can make those changes, it will help. But to any capacity, by you at least understanding these different terminologies when it comes to your equipment, you can at least have better odds of setting yourself up for success based off of how you bowl, right? But again, don't think that you can't make a bowling ball look a little bit different, and don't think you have to rely on a different ball to do something, because there are so many things physically that you can do to make that ball have a different shape or help create the shape you're looking for, right? Only time I would suggest changing balls is if you physically, no matter what you change, unless it's so long as you can be consistent with it, if you can't physically make a change that will allow that ball you're throwing currently to look good and create the shape you're looking for, then is when I would suggest, okay, since I physically cannot be consistent with something I'm doing physically to help create that motion I want, then is when I would consider walking up to my bag with my different bowling balls and changing it to a different ball, right? So very, very useful. So trying to think what else is extremely pertinent. I think I covered most of the big stuff. I know there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to get into, so these live streams will be a lot more like regimented with the things I'm speaking about. So I know for right now, like, we've only got one episode of that out since I pushed out the 2 of the Bowling for Newbies playlist, because I'm trying to get some new faces to come on in here for the beginner category, so they can start to get in the pathway of learning, and they can catch up to where we're at, where we'll be in the in this new series that I'm starting. So my focus is definitely going to be more on that, but I'll still obviously do these streams. But I think moving forward, I can't stress my importance to all of you to come armed with some questions to ask, because since this series will likely be moving a tiny bit slower than the Bowling for Newbies playlist will, since I want to get that finished so people can segue into other videos easier, coming armed with questions so I can answer them for you is extremely useful, and it helps kind of drive the content of these, because the biggest usefulness these live streams have is that I can have some interaction with each of you individually, right? I mean, if I wanted to just make a video about the topics I'm discussing here, I could do that and have you watch it. But the big advantage we have is this is a good way we can speak. Oh, it's Mark. Hey, Mark. I hope you've been doing good. Let's see what you got. My ball was hooking so much, so I kept moving left. Suddenly, I got left to a point where the ball just went off a cliff and did not get to the head pin, Brooklyn, or just not. Yes, yeah, that's a very common problem with a lot of the equipment. So that I'll definitely start to talk into that rollout sort of concept, which is what you're falling victim to there, Mark. Like I said, like, we know what's out there. We know what the oil looks like. So what can I do? So my ball was hooking so much, I kept moving left. Suddenly I got left to a point where the ball just went off a cliff and did not get back to the head pin. Brooklyn was not get to the head. So because of all that oil up the center, Mark, when you kind of run into this wall, sort of to speak, right? Where, like as I was discussing earlier, there's some technology in the ball that's trying to allow it to reach equilibrium called precessions. And again, I'm not going to get into all that probably at many points at all. I might talk about PAP maybe, but you know. So because of that, since you're so far left and that ball is over so much oil and it's never getting to the dry part of the outside of the lane soon, it's seeing no friction and toward the in this video. Yes, you can. So once this is done, Debbie, it'll take a minute for it to like render or whatever, and it'll upload in here, and then you can go under the playlist tab, and it'll be live streams, and it'll be the last one that's in there. So yes, you can go back and rewatch everything. So what you're running into, Mark, is what we call rollout. So this concept is very frustrating because I used to have that problem a lot too, because like I said, I used to not have a good amount of speed to match up my revolutions I created. So because your bowling ball, like the technology in it is fighting to hook, but your ball is in so much slop up the middle of the lane the whole time, the ball is reaching equilibrium so late that it's just never reading. Because if your ball is in so much friction that the only time it sees any friction at all is after that oil cuts off, that equilibrium reaching, that process of precession has already happened. So there's no drive for that ball to kick back to the left. So since your ball's technology has been burned up and it's just now seeing friction after that oil cut off, after the ball's already used up all of that momentum it was trying to create, it just says, I'm done. I mean, you could put a flag on it because it looks like a sailboat because it just goes perfectly straight. Like there's nothing you can do to combat that. So a way to combat this, Mark, is if you are super far off to the left, you just have to get that ball at the break point or the friction board to get to the outside of that second arrow. Because if your ball's always stuck in between that, it's always in all of the oil and it is always going to have difficulties. So you have to be a lot more careful and make sure it gets to the outside of the lane where there's that 1 to 10 ratio and allow it to read into the pocket, right? But if you're bowling on if you don't bowl on house, Mark, and you bowl on sport, you just have to get out of that ball. You just have to get into something smoother that you can get out of, because there is no free hook on those sport shots anywhere. But that's that concept of free hook, right? So if you're looking at it like a cliff, Mark, you want to jump off the cliff, not stay in the cliff, right? If you stay in the cliff and keep it up the middle of the lane, that causes that rollout and causes it to never respond. But if you jump off the cliff, get to the outside, you'll hit that free hook spot. So I hope that helps. But yes, I know that problem all too well, and I know a lot of people that have that problem too. So don't feel like you're refined to that. If you're confident that you can jump off the cliff each time, great, because it is kind of useful when you're that far in, because you can be pretty inaccurate. As long as you jump off the cliff, you'll hit the free hook in the spot you need it, since you're in the middle so long. But if you're bowling and you can't get it off the cliff, you just got to say, I'm done. I gotta get out of that ball and be able to move my feet back to the right hand side. Yeah, that's a very common, especially if you're bowling against people that bowl pretty straight and they're just pushing even more oil down. Now that pattern for you just turned from 40 feet to 45 feet. So now the ball is even struggling even more to read the lane the correct way and have that equilibrium reaching process of precession to get back into the pocket. So yeah, just jump off the cliff. Don't take that literally. I don't want to get in trouble. Make your bowling ball jump off the cliff. Let me clarify myself there. I'm not trying to get in trouble or get reported or anything. I did not say jump off a cliff, for the record. But yeah, good question. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, for all of you, like seriously, come armed with questions. Like if you're struggling to understand an adjustment or something, or understand why your bowling ball is behaving a certain way, even at league, like remember that and come into these live streams when I do it and just throw the question in. I don't care what I'm talking about. Come in and throw the question in so I can help all of you out, because that kind of stuff is extremely useful, because a lot of people do have the same issues that you're probably having. So if you voice it, not only are you helping yourself out, probably other people. But yeah, no, like it really is like, it is very interesting to see how equipment has sort of changed over the years, guys. Like if you look back, I mean, like I've said it so many times before, but like with how much oil there is now, these bowling ball companies make just so many things and so many different pieces of equipment that are so susceptible to friction to combat that volume of oil that's out there. There's so many numbers and so many geeks that are paid to figure all this stuff out, like how bowling balls react and how the science behind all of it is, right? Like it's just so freaking complicated. And I get so frustrated all the time on how there isn't a lot of coaching out there that makes it in a way that's simple and isn't boring. So I'm hoping that this adjusting and equipment series can kind of be that means of communicating a very simplistic understanding of these numbers and of these analytical things that all these geeks behind the screens are paid to do, right? Because the last thing we need is to overcomplicate another thing, right? There's so many complicated concepts and stuff, but it really is like you just have to go out there and experience it. Do you have an episode on lane play before and after? I do not. That actually will be where this series I'm starting off right now, Debbie, actually transitions into. So the point of this series at the beginning is to discuss what the equipment is and to kind of paint the picture for what the bowling balls are trying to do. And then by you understanding that, you can apply that knowledge to know how the lane's breaking down in ways that you can utilize your understanding of your equipment to help create that. That's great. Yeah. So I do have a basics for bowling adjustments video. It's in the pathway of learning. I think it's like, I don't know what it is, but I'm in a red shirt and I'm in my kitchen. So if that helps at all, it has like a very basic like layout of what the oil looks like that you're commonly bowling on and how it transitions and these concepts of like the splash zone and things I've talked about. That will be a good video for you. So if you go in the pathway of learning, I'll actually tell you where it's at. Allow me one brief moment. So if you go to the pathway of learning playlist, okay, it is called How to Strike More, Intro to Basic Bowling Adjustments. It is the 8th video. It's just after the Pathway of Learning episode 4. I'm in a red shirt and I'm like this in the cover. Freaking whatever I was doing. So that video will be very useful for that. But yeah, because I could very easily sit here and start to make content on ways to adjust. But I think if you don't go into a video that's teaching you about adjustments with a basic understanding of how these bowling balls are even playing off that oil, it makes it hard to really grasp the concepts of how that oil is moving, right? Especially with what I always say is the most complicated part of bowling is this oil, the oil, and understanding the balls because we can't see the oil. Like it's invisible to your naked eye. And because of that, you have to have some way in your head to sort of paint that picture or create the puzzle. And I say this all the time too, that the sad reality of it is you never have every piece to the puzzle and you never will, right? You might think you have every piece to the puzzle, but you know, if you get comfortable, bowling punishes you. Like it'll leave splits and make you open and stuff if you get too comfortable. So you have to almost just continue to just, you know, play the cards you got, show the puzzle you got, use the pieces you got to build as much of the puzzle as you can and understand as much as you can. Because every professional, every amateur, everyone everywhere, if they tell you different, I'm sorry, but I strongly disagree, and I think they're wrong. That nobody knows bowling. Nobody really knows it. It like knows adjusting. Like you can understand adjusting concepts, but nobody really knows adjusting because adjustments for me are not going to be the same for Mark or Debbie or any of us. Like our adjustments and our ways of making adjustments based off how we throw are always going to be different. And on top of that, since nobody has a means of perfectly picturing what that oil looks like there is no one way to adjust. And since we can't all picture the same picture in our minds, it's wrong to say that something works for everybody, right? Like I don't understand how people can say that or like say that they know what to do right away because nobody knows what to do. They're guessing. You might say, oh, I know what I'm going to do on this next shot. And I say that all the time. We all have said that before. But you don't know. What you're knowing is I have a good educated guess on what I should do here and see if it works. Because I know we've all been there. We're like, I know what I'm going to do here. And you go up and you strike and you're like, I knew it. Perfect. You just made a phenomenal educated guess based off of your experience and based off of what you think you're seeing. But other times you can say, I know what I'm going to do this next shot. And you'll do it and you'll split or something. And it's like, oh, I clearly was missing the piece to that puzzle that time. Boom. Nobody knows adjustments. It is a series of educated guesses. And if you're more confident, it seems more like a I know and less of a I think, right? So you have to be confident with your adjustments. And you're not confident in your adjustments if you, one, don't understand yourself physically, and two, don't understand what your equipment is, and three, don't know how the oil is transitioning as you're bowling, which the pathway of learning teaches you about the things you're misconceived on and the you part of it. The beginning of this series will teach about the equipment part of it and the understanding of how the bowling balls do the things they do. And then at the end of it, it'll teach you, here's what my best depiction of ways you can paint the picture is. Here's what the puzzle looks like. Boom. That is the pathway here. That is the pathway. So I think that this series directly segues, and kind of why I discussed it and how it segues off the pathway of learning, because you have to understand yourself before you can understand your equipment and why it does the things you do, right? If you understand the things you do, it may make sense as to why your ball might look different, but then you have to understand why your ball does what it does. And then and only then is when you have most of the pieces of the puzzle to then fill in the last bit of what the oil looks like as it's transitioning. It's a very interesting concept, and this is the only sport that I know of, unless there's something that I've never heard of, where you're playing on an invisible playing field. I mean, like, imagine that. Imagine playing basketball with a hoop that's not there. Have you talked about the impact of dropping weight? I went from 16 to 15 and picked 8 pins on average. Now I just bought a 14-pound ball. We'll see it impacts my league volume. Yes. So the big thing that it messes with, Mark, is just the deflection characteristics. Now, optimally, at least according to what the books say and what the geeks with the behind the console say, they say 15 pounds is the most optimal, because it favors the best amount of deflection characteristics, as well as, because again, like 16 pounds, many would say it has not enough deflection, right? It helps with carry, they say, because I mean it's a bigger weight crashing into a smaller weight, so it'll hit those weights around harder. But because of that, it doesn't get deflected around as much. So a lot of guys that throw 15 or that throw 16 pounds, especially if they're throwing a 16-pound ball that has a late reaction, you'll notice a lot of the time, I bet you'll notice it, a lot of like 8 and 9 pins a lot, because their balls are reading so late and they have such a steep angle of entry that their ball is just hitting so hard and it has so much drive that it struggles to hit those pins in the middle of the back since it's not deflecting enough. Versus on the contrary, if you throw a 14, it has an easier time deflecting. So if you're lighter or something, it will punish you more often with a 10 pin or something, because it has an easier time getting spewed away from that head pin. So the weights more so have more of a direct impact on the deflection, but nothing really more than that, because I can actually tell you, I actually experienced this myself. I started off with 15-pound, and I actually just recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, dropped down to a 14, and my average went up by like, 8 to 10-ish pins, because the weight really more so is, you should more so worry about how it feels, right? The weight is more so catered to yourself, right? And what you're feeling, right? Anyone can make any weight of ball work, but so long as you're in that 14, 15, or 16-pound range of weight, it'll always have a deflection characteristics that's at least mostly, if not completely optimal to that of what the weight of the pins is, right? You just have to be a lot more careful. And I will tell you from experience of others, as well as my personal going from 15 to 14 pounds, you definitely do have to be a little bit tighter on that head pin than what you're used to, because, well, it bounces around easier. So, also, since it is a little bit lighter, that means there's less weight gliding on the lane. So that means the ball might, if you look at the weight difference, if you like look at a ball, it might have like the differentials and RGs. They are a little different for each weight. So usually, since it's lighter and it's not pressing down that surface as much, it's not getting as much friction. So it tends to make the stronger looking things a little bit less strong and make the sharper things look a little bit less sharp. I practiced with the 14 to see making more accurate. I picked up a little speed, effortless speed. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Yeah, because the last thing you want is to have like a boulder, what feels like a boulder in your hand. You know, like we're not Fred Flintstone. Like we're not trying to like muscle it, right? So if you have, a lighter ball, but you have a lighter ball because it feels better for you, then that's better for you, right? I mean, a ball is only good if it's hitting the right spot. So you could do what's optimal, but if you can't execute that in a way that's optimal for you, then it just nullifies everything, right? I mean, what does it matter if I'm throwing 15 or 16 pounds, or what does it matter if I'm throwing 6 pounds or 16 pounds if I never hit the head pin, right? So, I mean, if that's a drastic example, but if I throw 16 pounds and I can never hit the head pin, then it doesn't matter what the heck the deflection is at that point. But if I can throw 14 and be a lot more accurate and keep it on line with that head pin more, then switch to 14 pounds, because that's better for you. So if people mess with you for that, don't let them, because they clearly lack the understanding of why you made that change. And everybody makes that change. Everyone will make a change at some point. I'm sure maybe at some point I might go back up to 15 pounds or whatever. But the weight is more so, if it feels good for you, then good. But just understand that the RG and differentials for that ball, if you're looking at the same ball, 15, 16, or 14 pounds, they're a little different since the weight that they're applying onto the lane are a little different, lighter or heavier. So when you're on a website and you're looking at a bowling ball, make sure you click on the weight that you plan on purchasing, because again, like the weight block on the inside, that block that makes the RGs and differentials different, that block has to be smaller or bigger to inflect that difference in the weight, right? A 16-pound weight block might be this big, and a 14-pound weight block might be this big, because they have to make the weight block smaller because it's a weight block, right? So because of that, that makes those numbers a little different. So while you're making your chart, make sure you look up your bowling ball in the weight of that of the one that you have, or a plan on the one that you're purchasing. That's something I definitely should have made mention of. I will actually take a note of that right now, so that way I can make sure I discuss that in a future video. So thank you for that question. Okay, that is all written down. So thank you, thank you. Look at that. See, we all help each other out here. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So we got about 9 minutes left here, and I have gone well over everything that I have planned on going to cover. So I will stick around and make sure we have any questions, and I could ramble on about some other stuff. But this is so great. Awesome. I'm glad you're liking it, Debbie. I don't know how new to the channel you are or how long you've been around, but there's a lot of pretty rich and decent content on here. At least I like to think so. So if you have any questions or anything, like, you can comment on here, you can comment on the video or whatever, and I'll happily answer back to you as soon as I can. As soon as I can. I know in the next episode of that adjustments video, I think I'm going to start to kind of dive into the like cover stocks, because that's a big thing that, although alterable, is still useful. Oh, it's Rob. Hey, Rob. I hope you were able to see my comments. I don't know if you had emailed me back, but I hope I was able to help you out. And if you have any questions, be sure to let me know. What recommendations do you make for sport shots? So, all right. So, sport shots are all so different. So, there's this rule of 31 that everyone says, where they say you take the length of the pattern and minus 31, and that gives you the break point your ball should be getting. I don't think it really matters about that kind of stuff. I think it really matters on, here's the unfortunate reality. House shot is so forgiving with people that I think that it makes sport shots seem way harder than it really is. I think that this adjusting thing will help kind of alleviate this and make it easier to understand. But it's not really with sports shot about who's being the most perfect. It's more of who is allowing themselves to be the least amount of perfect but still score the best, right? So you really have to cater how you're bowling in the now to support you in the later. Because if you know how the oil breaks down and how stuff is pushing all this oil and moving it around and soaking it up, if you stand in a spot that works now, but you lose that spot and you now can't adjust off of it or have any miss room at all, you're screwed, because nobody is perfect down to the accuracy of the width of a nickel 150 times consecutively. That's just not possible. But if you, as a bowler, can make this much miss room into this much miss room down lane, you're golden, because now you're getting way less punished for your mistakes. And if you are getting punished, you're not getting punished with like a split or something ugly. You're giving you like, a ring 10 or a spewer 4 or a spewer 7 or something stupid, right? Like, it's one thing if you're getting punished for the little things or drastically, and it's one thing if it's kind of punishing you with like, oh, you left the wrap 10, or oh, you left the stone 8. Oh, that stinks. But it's a single pin spare, right? So this concept of offensive versus defensive bowling, I think, is very applicable to sport shots. And a lot of bowling is defensive, right? Think about the future. Think about, how is this shot going to change my next one? Or how is this person bowling going to impact my bowling? So if you can kind of, brush that lane surface to give you the most amount of help. How do I create that room for error on sport shots? Let's say it's 42 feet. So, okay, 42 feet. So this is a little bit of your middle of the road length pattern, right? So we know, depending on, no matter what ball we throw, our balls are always pushing down some oil. So I don't know if you had saw my basics of bowling adjustments videos, but I call this area the splash zone. So let's say I'm always rolling my ball up 10, right? Let's say it goes 10 at the arrows and 10 at the break point. I bet you that's not how it would look. Let's just say it is, right? Let's just say there's 10 people all throwing 10 at the arrows, 10 at the break point, and they're striking from there. So 10 in the arrows, where the ball are always dry, the early part of that area is being drier, right? But since their ball is now redepositing that oil later down, toward the break point after that oil cutoff, there's now more oil down there. So let's say instead of, and that 10 board, it's 42 feet of oil. I bet you now it's more like 43, 44, maybe even with all those people bowling 45 feet of oil. Since their ball soaked at the beginning and redeposited at the end, it now extended the area of that. So if you're bowling, if you're playing to the left of them and your ball was hooking before, and let's say your break point is also 10, Mark, since you have a pretty aggressive style, let's say you're playing to the left of them and that's where your break point is, your ball is now going to lose its kick since your spot of the lane you're playing is now longer, right? Theirs are hitting the dry earlier, so it's making their ball read early, but yours is gliding through a bunch of oil in the beginning and more oil at the end. So now your ball is kind of losing that kick. It won't hook back from there. So by understanding this, you could adopt an approach like this for yourself to help you create that. Did I miss the speed down advice? No, I'll help you out here in a moment. So let's say you could play to the right of where you anticipate I'm playing. Like I did this in a regional and it helped me out a lot. So they gave us practice time. So what I did, Mark, was I knew where I was going to bowl. So what I did was I moved like 10 right of that, and I was just throwing Brooklyns for practice. And everyone was like, why is he throwing Brooklyns for practice? Well, I'm creating that splash zone since it's hooking so soon to the left of where I was going to be throwing my ball. So now, once I moved to the left, if I got it to where I wanted it, it was fine. Let's say I missed to the left. It now hit that splash zone and helped it hold for longer, keeping me in the pocket. And it was like a freaking suction cup. I mean, I had like pretty much like almost 3 or 4 boards at the arrows I could miss by, and my ball would still read the right way. I mean, sure, it might not like strike, it might leave me like a 10 pin, but on a sport shot, that is almost unheard of. So if you can understand that concept of beginning drier, ending longer, and that's what most of the transition will look like, you know, okay, I have to avoid that splash zone, or okay, I'm playing into that splash zone, or vice versa. So very basic, very basic adjusting there, but that's a big one, especially if you're bowling a ball like a urethane. That's why there's that big debate on those purple hammers, because those balls push even more oil since they soak up so much and redeposit it. It makes that splash zone way more and way faster. It's even worse if you're bowling against someone that throws all over the place, because now there's just the oil is just getting pushed everywhere. So I hope that helps, and I can obviously expand more on that later on, and I for sure will in some other videos. But if you want to watch more on that, I was speaking to Debbie about it earlier. In the Pathway of Learning, there's a video of me in my kitchen. I'm in a red shirt, and I'm like, it's like a basics to bowling adjustments video. I cover that concept of the splash zone and ways that the oil breaks down. So that might give you a very basic understanding of ways that you can create room for yourself, but that's the overarching concepts of it. So I see the diggies. So did I miss the speed dominant advice? So your thing with speed dominant bowling is that your ball is going to have a hard time reading. So first, we have to get into friction sooner. So by standing more toward the outside of the lane, where less of the oil is in the beginning, this will help that ball read the lane sooner and read enough to get it back into the pocket. And since we've been talking about bowling equipment this whole episode, getting a ball that's designed to hook sooner rather than later, since you can't afford for that, is what you're going to want to look for. So if you haven't had opportunity to watch that video I just posted on the brand new series with the Arsenal Advantage and Adjustments, go into there and watch that, and I'll talk about this concept of, or even just rewatch this where I talked about RG and differentials. If you understand, I need a lower RG bowling ball that's designed to read the raid sooner, and one that has a high differential that hooks more. If you can understand that kind of stuff, you'll know what kind of bowling ball you should be purchasing that best fits your style of bowling. So, good questions. I know we're at time here, but we have quite a handful of viewers in here, so I'm willing to hand over a little bit more time here if any of you have any more questions. For now, I'll keep expanding on what I was just discussing about with the speed dominance for you, Diggy, moving forward here. So, if any of you have anything, I'll stay after an extra 10 minutes. That's totally fine. So, also, Mark, I hope that helped, and I'll check my email to see if you got back to me. Yes. So, the Diggies. So, on top, expanding on that, if you're, I guess the big question is, how speed dominant are you, right? If your speed is so high that your bowling ball isn't really moving much at all and isn't doing much with the friction, then that is when I would say you might want to learn to dial back your speed a bit. But if you're speed dominant, but enough to where your bowling ball is still reading the lane, then okay, then we're good. But I'm going to assume that you're you're speed dominant, not speed like completely dominant, but just speed dominant. So again, going off what I said earlier, you need a ball that's designed to read the lane soon and read the lane and be strong, right? You need a ball that's designed to hook soon, probably something that's smoother and less aggressive, since again, we know if we have something that's aggressive and waits till the oil cut off, that's bad for speed dominant, because that means since your ball's going so fast, the oil cuts off and it has no time to read. You need something that is a low RG and a high differential bowling ball. So something like an Ion Max or something like a Eternity Pi or something like that. Something that's designed to be aggressive but smooth to a certain degree, right? But the oil, you're battling against the oil because the oil is creating less friction for you. I bowled a hard right now. Is so far left than normal. Off my hands, 18.5, and I'm at 270 rep. Okay, yeah. So you're okay. So you're pretty speed dominant then. Okay, so I would say for you, since your revolutions aren't crazy high, you're definitely quite speed down. 18.5 is pretty quick too. I wish I had 18.5 mile per hour speed. Definitely work on your release mechanics and trying to hit up the back of the ball. I don't know how around the side or up the back of the bowling ball you get, but if your hand gets around the bowling ball and it's rotating like this completely, it's going to have an even harder time reading. So focus on that fundamental of letting the ball roll end over end more so than on its side like this. That will help the ball read sooner and help get it to wheel a lot better and not force you to move a ton to the left-hand side. Especially for you, since I'm sure you're so used to playing way to the right, the minute you move left, that becomes uncomfortable for you. So during any practice time you have or anything such as that, I know obviously what you're bowling on might not permit you to move that far to the left, but see if you can practice just getting your eyes used to looking into that area, right? With that 2-point targeting system that I discussed, try adopting that into wherever it is you're bowling. I also found that my pitches are wrong and could be why I'm not matched since my ball is flying off my hand. That also can have quite a bit of a thing. Yeah, you can even look into pitching in the fingers to allow them to catch harder and help create more. I don't know if you use power grips or just your standard grips. You might benefit more from just the standard grips, the ones that don't have the little like flat bit that fits in your hand here, because that lets you not hit it as hard. It doesn't let you get as much rotation out of it. But if you have those more standard ones, it kind of molds around your finger more and is harder to get out, so it lets you catch it a little bit harder. I know a lot of people like to use those like flat tipped ones because it feels nicer in your hand, and a lot of people might think that it is. You're okay. Okay, yeah, okay, you're good then. Okay, so yeah, try to focus on seeing in practice how far to the left can you go and still get your ball to respond. I don't care how slow you have to throw it. Just see how it is, and then I'm sure it might be frustrating and difficult, but it'll at least get you used to playing over there. So in an instance where you do have to play over there, it won't feel as like foreign and unnatural for you. Because I know for me, more often than not, since I have a pretty high revolutions, I often do you recommend a forward pitch in the fingers? I'm kind of indifferent with how I pitch the fingers. It's definitely a lot of how you like to release. I want to say 30 is my max comfort. Yeah, that's probably about right. So for you, Rob, because I know we were talking about pitches and stuff. I really don't think your pitches are causing much of an issue. I I think what it really is, Rob, is like the pitches only become applicable when your leverage is in a manner that's not well fit to your ball. I don't that makes no sense. So let me backtrack. So if you create I need you to create more leverage, Rob. That's the only thing. Seriously, your form was immaculate. I was taken back. I was like, wow, Rob throws the ball very well. So give yourself a lot of credit. But I think that pitch is hurting you that you have because your hand's not super. You get some leverage, but if you got a little bit more, Rob, your ball would rip down the lane. You get even more speed probably too, effortlessly too. If you can get more leverage, those pitches don't really do a whole lot different. It might impact how much to the side around the ball or up the back of the ball you're getting, especially if you pitch it to the side or more. If you pitch it more forward and back, then obviously that'll change how hard you can hit it. But if you pitch it to the side, that might help you work that ball to your hand to the inside of the ball sooner. But like if you could get a little bit more leverage, I think that forward or that pitch that you have on yours now, it won't really cause nearly as much of an impact because when you're on top of the ball, if your fingers are pitched one way or the other, that will make a big difference. Or even if you're just a little bit behind the ball, if it's pitched a little bit different, that will make a big difference, especially with your feel. But I really don't. I would recommend for you. I think what you had was fine. I would just really focus on relying on that moment at the peak of your swing to catch a little bit more and ride that wave and ride that wave. Because I'm telling you, you even though I know you're having problems missing right, I think that you'll get that stuff to come and bottom out. But it'll be a real nice feeling when you know, oh, I missed to the right. Oh my God, it hooked. That's the best feeling because I could see that very, very quickly becoming a thing. I'm not saying to keep missing right. I hope that we can keep working on that. But to any capacity, if it happens, you're at least like, oh, cool. Like at least the ball responded from out there. Um, I miss the RG talk, but I use 14 pounds so most of your balls are mid to high. Yeah, I use 14 pounds too. The weights do make difference. I did make note of that. I don't know if you watched the video, but making a chart with where your different bowling balls land up, I think is extremely critical there. So dry lanes should be more up the back of the ball or set. So the dry lanes we know are going to read sooner, right? So in easy terms here, Debbie, the more up the side of the ball you get, the later that ball will want to read the lane. And the more up the back of the ball you get, where it's rolling more at the pins, the sooner it'll want to read the lane, right? If we think of a car with a tire, if it's driving at the pins, I mean, that means it'll have an easier time going at it. But if it's skidding through ice and it's trying to turn, it's going to have a hard time turning, right? Versus driving straight. So that's the best way you can think about it. So if you're on dry lanes and your ball's hooking too much, if you can stay in the oil for as long as you can and get a little bit more around it, that'll mean it'll have a harder time seeing that change in direction. Versus if it's a little bit, darker lanes, there's a lot more oil, and you get more up the back of it, that means it'll have an easier time reading sooner and hooking more. So good question. So I'll stick around for a couple more questions if you guys have it, and then I will sign off. That's cool to see a lot of people in here, and it was good to see Rob because he was the last video I was able to review before we changed that. I think I am going to put the prices back down to free because I can't do that to you guys. I really can't. I really cannot. Way too many people have come and reached out, and way too many people have asked for my assistance. And with us being we're at 264 subscribers. That just feels so wrong to me to even be charging at this point. So I will set the special back up and keep it to free. If you aren't aware of the special, it'll be completely free as many times as you'd like to do it up until we reach the subscriber goal. But I actually added another one in support of what I done for Rob, who was just in here a brief moment ago, where we can either do a phone call, a email or something like that, or you could even email me a video or text me, whatever it is you like to do there. So we could either do like a phone call, or you could even be at league and call me if you want, if that's what you'd like, when you'd like to do this, and we could do it. Would I be able to reach out to you about my arsenal and come work away? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But seriously, these things are completely like up to whatever you guys would like them to be about. It's whatever you are looking to improve on. So I know like the last one I did, he had reached out because he was looking to work on hitting his target more and look at me refining his form. So if you want to email me what you got or forward me what you got, Diggy, I can obviously message you. If you go onto the description of my YouTube channel, there'll be a little link that goes to my website. On that website, there will be like a little button that's like, oh, lessons, and it tells like information about me and all my stuff or whatever. But if you go on there, there's a little form that you can put in, and it's just like put your name, how you'd like me to contact you, what it is you're looking to do. If it's not like an email or a text conversation, like when you want to do like a call or something and whatever. And I will quickly go in there after I'm done with this stream, and I'll change it back to free until we get to 350 subscribers. And again, like it can be literally anything. If you want me to watch you bowl, I'll watch you bowl in league. If you want me to watch you do something, if you want help on something or need better understanding on something, that is what that is a means to do. So yeah, I'll actually go ahead and bookmark this now so I can go ahead and fix it because I changed it to have the half off special. I'm going to put it back to the fully discounted for free special. So up until we hit 350 subscribers, it will be fully free. So yeah. So, and obviously, Rob, if you're still in here, if you keep wanting to follow up or me expand on more, hit me up again and I'll happily keep on expanding on to the best I can because I want to make sure that you were able to get all you could out of that. But yeah, honestly, my biggest issue is predicting the ball out. Yeah, see, and we can work on that. So, I mean, if you want to send me videos or whatever, go ahead. But I just need a means of contacting you, and I don't want any of you to send your contact information in here because we all know how people can be sometimes, and I'm not going to mess with any of your stuff. I mean, it's just I just need a name and however you'd like me to contact you, and I'll contact you, and I won't blow you up. I'm not some crazy person with like a subscription that emails out stuff. It's like, hey, Coach Logan is live. Like we're not doing any of that here, people. It's all confidential between all of you guys and myself. But this was a good discussion. I'm glad we were able to get some people that were feeling very, very entitled and very confident with asking questions. I know over the period of this, especially when the channel had first started, I think a lot of people were very timid to ask questions. And this has been one of the most active chats I've had out of any of these streams. So I'm very, very appreciative of all of you. And again, like if even if you bring a notepad or something to a competition or a league or whatever and write down problems you're having, I would strongly advise doing so and bring it to me. Like bring it to me, because it's very easy to forget things when they were happening versus when they were happening, especially when it comes to something that you're feeling that might be weird. If you can document something right then and there as to what you're feeling when it's best in your head, and you can regurgitate it to me when we're in one of these settings, then is when I can help all of you out the best I can. But seriously, like to any capacity, any layout advice? I think it kind of depends what you're looking for, Rob. I know a lot of people like to worry about layouts, but I will tell you, the layout only affects like 10% of the ball motion, which you'll come to learn more on in the later of the episodes. But I think what you're looking for you at least is, I mean, I guess it depends what you're bowling on, but from my understanding, since you have so much power and your speed matches up very well with your revolutions, and with the ball you had in the video, I couldn't see how much revolutions you were getting, but it looked like you got quite a decent handful. Um, I could definitely email you more about the layouts and stuff you're looking for, because I don't know what exactly stuff you have and what, I don't know what clubs you have in your golf bag and what clubs we still need to get you for the bowling ball equipment that you need, right? Or whatever analogy you want to call it. So if you want to keep reaching out to me on email and stuff, I can give you more layouts and stuff I would suggest for the type of motion you're looking to create and the like spots in your bag you're missing. Because I'm guessing for you, you probably have a lot of like reactives and stuff. I would say for layouts, I would definitely look for more like pin down sort of kind of thing. Or let me think. Obviously, we can go more into it, but let me see if I can find a good one. I also don't know like what driller you use. If you guys use like the 60 by 20 measurements, or if you use the other measurements and stuff. But you'll probably want, I mean, obviously a pin down so you can have something that's a little bit smoother. But to what capacity? Because I don't know what your PAP is either. But definitely pin down. I'm guessing, because I'm guessing most of your stuff is probably reactive and probably more traditional pin up sort of stuff. You'll definitely want like a pin down. But we can obviously get more into that. But good question. So if there's any other quick last minute questions, I'll let you guys throw them in real quick. Otherwise, but yeah, I think this was a good live stream. I think we got some very good discussions out of this and got everyone to be as engaged as possible. But yeah, like I said, be sure to check out the website if you guys would like to schedule something, or even just an email thread. Because I mean, obviously, if it's just an email or a texting or whatever, like we don't have to schedule that. I can just reach out to all of you. But yeah, it makes me happy to see that all of you are engaged and actively asking questions and stuff. I know with equipment and stuff, it just gets so complicated, and I'll do my best to make sure that it's as least complicated as I can make it for each of you. So again, reach out with any questions you have. Leave comments on videos and stuff, because I love responding to your comments. Even on some of the people, none of you in here have done it, but even on some of the people that like to kind of like knock some of the stuff, like constructive criticism is what I need, guys. I want to make sure I'm delivering the best thing I can for each of you, to make sure that all of you are understanding these concepts and developing as best as all of you can. So please continue to reach out, offer constructive criticism. I'm in the service, guys. My feelings don't get hurt. Like if you think someone's saying like, oh, like I don't like how you do this, like if that's gonna hurt my feelings, like, oh, I've been told way worse in my life. I'm a lieutenant in the National Guard, so I know way too well how scummy people can be. So don't think that your constructive criticism is going to hurt my feelings, or if you dislike something, like seriously tell me. I'm learning this just like all of you, so just let me know. So alrighty, I hope all of you enjoyed this. I'm super duper stoked to continue to produce more content for you. And again, if you have questions or anything, leave a comment, check out the website and everything. I'll get it updated right now, so that way it's all up to date. This video will take a minute to render, Debbie, since I know you wanted to go watch it back. So give it like an hour or so, and it should be re-rendered. It should give you a little notification if you're subscribed. So alrighty, thank you all so much, and I hope all of you enjoy your week. It's a lovely Monday tomorrow morning. So